Today I'm going to go over a few different lift kit options for the Toyota FJ Cruiser. If you're a subscriber on my channel, you'll know that I recently picked up this 2010 FJ and I am currently in the process of formulating my build plan. In addition to a lift kit, I'm also planning on a larger set of wheels and tires. Anywhere from 285s to 315s was the original plan, but the more research that I've done, I think I'm going to go with either 285s or 295s. I absolutely love the way that 315s look, but they're a little bit more involved and costly than I would like to experiment with. With the 315s, you're looking at replacing the upper control arms, lower control arms, body mount relocation kit, re-gearing, and then likewise a significant hit to performance and fuel economy. Now I was also thinking between 2 inches to 4 inches of total lift. Based on the kits that I'm currently looking at, I'll probably go with either 2.5 or 3 inches of total lift. There are 3 kits that I've honed in on: the Bilstein 5100s, the Bilstein 6112 front shocks with either 5100 or 5160 rear shocks, and the Fox 2.5s. If there's any other kit that you think I should be considering, I'd love to get your suggestions in the comments below. Now you may be wondering why I'm not considering an Icon lift kit, given that I recently installed one on my Tacoma. Well, for starters, I wasn't really that pleased with the performance. It's got a very harsh ride now, and likewise, as you can see, my truck is currently out of commission. It's got less than 2,000 miles on it since the lift kit was installed, 3 months total, and my front shock has failed. I noticed a little wet spot on the garage floor and realized that oil was leaking and the whole shock was covered in oil. Got a little spray here in the wheel compartment, and so the shock is currently in at Icon getting replaced. Now it's unfortunate because Icon does offer a number of really great options for the FJ Cruiser, but I don't want to be replacing my shock every 3 months, so that brings us back to our 3 original options. Now starting off with the 5100s. That's what I've got installed on the 4Runner, and I've been very pleased with this setup. Bilstein 5100s are probably one of the most recognized products within the off-road and Toyota community. Great product in terms of durability, performance, and cost. Very reasonably priced overall. With all 3 of these options, I do need either a rear spacer or rear coils in conjunction with a lift kit, so I'm leaning toward a set of Bilstein B12 rear coils. With those rear coils included and the whole 5100 setup, I'm looking at just under $600 if I go this route, so very reasonably priced. One of the ways that it is so competitive is that they reuse the front coils. So there is an additional step because you've got to deconstruct your original coils, reuse those on the new setup, and so it's a little bit more complicated in that sense, although not really all that challenging. With this setup, you can lift the front of the vehicle up to 2.5 inches, rear of the vehicle up to 1.5 inches. At the front, we've got 3 different height settings, and like I said, I've been very pleased with this setup on the 4Runner. Now the 6112s are kind of a step up from that. The front 6112s, for starters, they've got 5 height settings. Instead of reusing your coils, you also get new coils, so it helps with dampening. You do still have to construct the front coilover because it's got those 5 different clip settings. You've got to choose what clip you're going to set it at and then put it together. So it is, again, a little bit more complicated in terms of constructing it, but it's not that challenging. With the 6112s, it's kind of a beefier shock than what you get with the 5100s. The shock assembly increases from 1.95 inches on the 5100s to 2.65. The piston increases from 46 millimeters to 60 millimeters, and the rod increases from 14 millimeters to 18 millimeters. So all around, it's just kind of a beefier setup than what you get with the 5100s. The other nice thing about this setup is that because it's larger, it's got more oil, which helps to keep it cooler when it is being used for off-roading. So helps to kind of maintain that performance long term. Now I mentioned that with this setup, I'd be looking at either the 5160s or 5100 rear shocks, leaning toward the 5100s. The reason for that is with the 5160s, they've got a remote reservoir, which again, you've got more oil, so it helps to kind of keep it cooler when you're off-roading, but it also complicates the installation process. You'll see that with my Icon setup here, I've got the remote reservoir. I had to drill into the chassis to mount this little bracket, and I also had to trim the upper shock mount to get me clearance for the hose. So it's a little bit more involved, and likewise I'm concerned that it would be with the FJ as well. The other thing too is I feel like by introducing that remote reservoir kind of complicates the shock and there's more room for failure. So Again, leaning toward the 5100 rear shock. If I go this route with the 6112s, the 5100 and the B12 coil at the rear, I'm looking at about $1,050 in total for the cost. So kind of the midterm option. And then the top end option would be the Fox 2.5. With this setup, you're looking at about $1,700 total. So definitely much more premium. In some ways, I feel like you're paying a little bit for the brand image, but Fox also has a really good reputation in terms of quality. Now with the Fox 2.5s, I'm able to lift the front of the vehicle up to 3 inches, the rear of the vehicle up to 1.5 inches. So same at the rear, but it does give me a little bit more height at the front. And then with this setup, it's all aluminum. So in terms of heat dissipation, it helps to release some of that heat more so than what you're going to see with the Bilstein shocks. The other thing that's really nice about the Fox setup is that the front coilovers come fully assembled. So it takes away that additional step. The other thing that's nice is that it's got a threaded collar for adjusting the height. So two advantages to that. One is installation, because the total height of the shock is more compressed than what you're going to have with the 5100 or the 6112 when you install it. So it makes it easier to fit it in. And then once it's installed, then you can adjust the height. The other thing is that that height is more variable in terms of adjustment. Again, the 5100s, you've got 3 settings, 6112s, you've got 5 settings. So you've got to choose that setting before you install it, and once it's installed, you're stuck with it. The Fox shock, you can get installed and you kind of adjust it to your preference once you've got it in. The other thing that's nice about that is that, let's say that the passenger or driver side of your vehicle is more weighted, maybe sitting a little bit higher or lower. Because of that threaded collar, you can adjust those independently. So you could have the driver's side shock adjusted to be a little bit taller to kind of level that out, passenger a little bit lower. But with the 5100s or the 6112s, you've just got those preset clips, so you can't adjust them quite as much. So it does give you a little bit more of that flexibility overall. Whether it's worth that additional cost, that's what I'm kind of weighing at this point. So those are the 3 options that I'm currently considering. I'd love to get your feedback in the comments below. To stay up to date on my progress with the FJ, be sure to subscribe. In the meantime, thanks for watching.